The legend and the law. The holographic memorial stretched across 3 star systems, its ethereal light casting shadows on 100 worlds. Each flickering pixel represented a battle from the Orion Wars, humanity's first and most catastrophic introduction to galactic society. What had begun as a desperate defense of their home system had ended with entire alien armadas surrendering not to superior firepower, but to something far more terrifying: human unpredictability. Valith of House Krun pressed her taloned hand against the observation deck's reinforced transparasteel, watching the memorial's endless cascade of light. Her crimson scales rippled with barely contained frustration as she read the statistics scrolling past. The hegemony had lost 60% of their fleet. The Zephyrian Collective had sued for peace after humans somehow convinced half their forces to defect. The proud Nexari Empire had simply stopped fighting, their warriors weeping in their cockpits. "Impossible," she hissed, her serpentine tongue tasting the recycled air. No species could inspire such weakness in proven warriors. Behind her, the ship's AI chimed softly. "Ambassador Valith, we are approaching the Sol quarantine zone. Please prepare for threshold trial initialization." Valith turned from the memorial, her battle-scarred armor catching the starlight. Born into the warrior caste of Drakmor Prime, she had conquered 12 systems before her 20th molting season. Her genetic enhancement included combat reflexes that could process 17 different tactical scenarios simultaneously, bone density that could withstand direct plasma strikes, and neural modifications that suppressed fear responses entirely. Human, she sought strategic coordinator Marcus Holloway had somehow orchestrated the defense of the Kepler colonies using nothing but outdated mining equipment and civilian volunteers. The Intergalactic Concord's files claimed he had turned desperation into inspiration, a phrase that made no tactical sense to Velith's enhanced mind. "Begin trial sequence," she commanded, settling into the neural interface chair. The biomechanical tendrils extended from the headrest, seeking the connection ports behind her skull. "I will endure whatever psychological theater they have devised." The AI's voice carried an odd note of sympathy. "Ambassador, please understand the threshold trial has a 93% failure rate. Even among warrior castes, only initiate the sequence," Valith snarled, her enhanced reflexes already flooding her system with combat stimulants. "I have conquered worlds. I will not be broken by human sentimentality." The last thing she saw before the neural dive began was her reflection. In the dark screen, a perfect killing machine, engineered for victory, absolutely certain of her superiority. She had no idea she was about to discover what it meant to be fragile, afraid, and gloriously impossibly human. Walking in foreign skin, the simulation began without fanfare, no dramatic countdown, no ominous warnings. Valith simply was. She stood in an unfamiliar body, soft and vulnerable, her enhanced senses dulled to an almost painful degree. Her scales were gone, replaced by pale, thin skin that seemed to bruise at the slightest touch. Where once she had possessed the strength to crush steel, now her arms trembled under the weight of a simple tool. Most disturbing of all, her fear suppressors were offline. She could actually feel terror coursing through this weak form like poison. The setting materialized around her, a cramped mining station orbiting a dying star. Through the viewport, she watched Krun warships, her own people's vessels, approaching in perfect battle formation. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was about to experience conquest from the other side. "Jenny, we need to evacuate the lower levels now." The voice belonged to a human male running past her. Valith no Jenny. Somehow she knew that was her name in this simulation, felt her heart racing as alarms blared throughout the station. Her warrior's mind immediately began calculating tactical options, but this human body betrayed her at every turn. When she tried to move with her usual predatory grace, she stumbled. When she attempted to suppress her emotional responses, waves of genuine fear crashed over her instead. For the first time in her genetically enhanced life, Valeth understood what it meant to be mortal. The evacuation was chaos. Hundreds of humans, miners, technicians, families fleeing through corridors barely wide enough for two people. Valeth watched in growing amazement as these fragile beings, many of them elderly or carrying small children, moved with purpose rather than panic. A human father pressed a toy into his daughter's hands, whispering reassurances even as his own terror was written across his face. An elderly woman helped a stranger with a broken leg, sacrificing her own place in the escape pods. Then the impossible happened. As the Krun fleet drew closer, a small group of humans turned back. They weren't soldiers, just ordinary people with mining equipment and desperate courage. Valeth felt Jenny's memories surface. These people had families on the station, loved, ones who couldn't be evacuated in time. "We can't stop them," Jenny whispered, her voice raw with emotion Valeth had never experienced. "But maybe we can slow them down." What followed defied every principle of warfare Valeth had been taught. The humans didn't fight to win. They fought to buy time for others to escape. They used mining charges as improvised weapons, turned industrial equipment into makeshift shields, and coordinated their defense through nothing more than shared determination and whispered promises to protect each other. Valeth felt Jenny die in that simulation, crushed beneath debris while helping seal a breach that saved dozens of children. As consciousness faded, the last thing she experienced was not regret for tactical failure, but a strange sense of peace knowing others would live. The simulation ended. Valeth gasped, her real body convulsing as her enhanced systems came back online. But something had changed. For the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to choose others over victory. The weight of survival. The second simulation thrust Valeth into another human form, this time a soldier named David Reeves, standing in the ruins of New Geneva after the Zephyrian bombardment. Her warrior's pride should have been satisfied. Finally, she was in a military context she could understand. Instead, she felt only horror. This human body was different from Jenny's stronger, trained, equipped with basic combat armor, but still impossibly fragile compared to her enhanced form. Worse, it carried memories she couldn't block. David's wife Maria, his two children, his parents who had lived in the residential district that was now a crater of fused glass dot. The other survivors moved through the wreckage like ghosts. Valeth watched human faces that should have shown defeat instead display something she couldn't comprehend. They were organizing rescue efforts, treating wounded, sharing their meager supplies with strangers. In Krun society, defeat meant death or subjugation. These humans seemed to view their survival as an obligation to help others do the same. Sergeant Reeves? A young private approached, her uniform torn and bloodied. "We found 17 civilians trapped in the subway tunnels. The structural damage is too severe for our equipment, but we try anyway," David's voice said through Valeth's lips, the words coming from memories she didn't understand. Her enhanced tactical analysis screamed that it was hopeless. The energy expenditure would weaken their position. The time lost could prove fatal if enemy forces returned. The probability of success was less than 12%. Yet she found herself crawling through collapsed tunnels, her borrowed human hands bleeding as she dug through debris. The trapped civilians weren't soldiers or essential personnel, just ordinary people who had been unlucky enough to be underground when the bombardment began. By every military doctrine Valeth knew, they should be written off as acceptable losses. But David's memories wouldn't let her abandon them. She saw flashes of his children's faces, remembered bedtime stories and birthday parties, and simple moments of happiness that the bombardment had stolen forever. These strangers weren't tactical assets or burdens. They were someone's children. Parents, lovers, friends. Hour after hour, she dug. Other soldiers joined her, their own faces grim with exhaustion and grief. But none of them suggested retreating to a defensible position. When they finally broke through to the trapped civilians, Valeth felt an emotion she had no name for. Joy mixed with sorrow, triumph tempered by loss. The 17 people they saved would go on to join the resistance movement that eventually turned the tide of the war. But David Reeves never knew that. He died 3 days later, not in glorious battle, but while delivering medicine to a makeshift hospital. His last act was giving his own rations to a hungry child who reminded him of his daughter Dot as the simulation ended. Valeth realized she was crying, her real body producing tears for the first time since her emotion suppressors had been installed. The humans hadn't won through superior tactics or overwhelming force. They had won by refusing to let survival become more important than the reasons for surviving Dot in her warrior culture. The living honored the dead by achieving victory. Humans honored their dead by saving the living. The breaking point the third. Simulation was the cruelest yet. Valeth found herself in the body of Thomas Chun, a communications officer aboard the UES Defiance during the final battle of the Orion Wars. This time, she wasn't a civilian or ground-based soldier. She was at the heart of humanity's space-based resistance. Surrounded by the very technology and tactical situations she understood best. It should have been easier. Instead, it was devastating. Thomas's memories revealed the impossible odds humanity faced. The combined alien fleets numbered in the thousands, their technology centuries ahead of human capabilities. Earth's entire space-based defense consisted of converted cargo haulers, civilian craft with welded-on weapon systems, and a handful of prototype warships, held together by determination and prayer. But it wasn't the military situation that broke Valeth. It was Thomas's final transmission home. The communication array crackled with messages from across the human fleet. Not tactical updates or strategic commands, but personal farewells. A captain recorded a lullaby for the daughter she'd never see grow up. An engineer told his parents he was proud to be their son. A pilot recited poetry to the lover waiting on Mars, her voice steady despite knowing she had minutes to live. Thomas's own message was the simplest and most shattering. Through his eyes, Valeth saw the recording interface and felt his fingers trembling as he activated it. The face that appeared on screen was that of an elderly woman, his grandmother, the only family he had left after the bombardments. "Hey, Nana," Thomas whispered, his voice cracking. "I wanted you to know I love you. I wanted you to know that everything we're doing up here, it's for people like you. For the right to have quiet Sunday mornings and terrible cooking and arguments about old movies. For the right to be ordinary and precious and human." He paused, watching the tactical display as the alien fleets moved into attack formation. "I'm scared, Nana. I don't want to die. But I'm not ashamed of being scared, because you taught me that brave isn't about not being afraid. Brave is about doing what needs to be done, even when you're terrified." Through Thomas's memories, Valeth felt the weight of every human life. In the balanced billions of people who just wanted to continue existing, to love and lose and hope and dream in their brief, brilliant spans of consciousness. She experienced the crushing responsibility of knowing that their survival depended on imperfect, terrified people making impossible choices. The battle itself was a masterpiece of human stubbornness. Outgunned ships rammed enemy vessels, rather than retreat. Damaged fighters used their final moments to clear paths for evacuation transports. When conventional weapons failed, humans improvised using mining charges, industrial equipment, even their own ships as weapons. But the moment that shattered Valeth completely came when Thomas made his final choice. Enemy boarding parties had breached the Defiance's hull, and the ship's self-destruct was offline. Thomas could have abandoned his post, could have tried to reach the escape pods with the other survivors. Instead, he manually overloaded the communications array, turning it into an improvised explosive that would cripple the enemy flagship's command systems. His last act wasn't violent or vengeful. It was a quiet sacrifice that would give other humans a chance to live. As the simulation ended, and Velith's consciousness returned to her own body, she wasn't crying anymore. She was sobbing, her enhanced form racked with emotions her modifications were never designed to process. For the first time in her life, she understood that strength wasn't about being unable to break. It was about choosing to keep fighting after you already had. The understanding, the neural interface retracted, leaving Velith alone in the darkened chamber. Her crimson scales, once a mark of pride, now seemed like armor against a universe she had never truly understood. The warrior who had entered the simulation chamber was gone, replaced by someone who carried the weight of 3 human lives in her memory. She sat in silence for what might have been hours, processing emotions that had no names in her language. The confidence that had carried her across conquered worlds felt hollow now, replaced by something infinitely more complex, understanding laced with humility, strength tempered by compassion. When the chamber doors finally opened, Velith expected to face some elaborate test or formal ceremony. Instead, a simple human male entered, carrying 2 cups of what smelled like heated plant matter. He was unremarkable by the standards of any warrior culture average height, graying hair, wearing simple civilian clothes that showed no rank or status. "Strategic Coordinator Marcus Holloway," he said, offering her one of the cups. His voice was quiet, weathered by experiences she could now partially comprehend. "You can call me Marcus." Velith accepted the cup with shaking talons, surprised by its warmth. "I experienced them. Thomas, David, Jenny, they were real?" Marcus settled into the chair across from her, his movements careful but not defensive. "Composites based on real people, real events. The threshold trial doesn't show you fiction, Ambassador. It shows you truth through human eyes. Why?" The word came out as a whisper. "Why do you force others to endure this?" "Because," Marcus sighed, taking a sip of his drink. "After the Orion Wars, the galaxy was terrified of us. Not because of our weapons or our tactics, but because they couldn't understand what drove us to fight the way we did. They saw our refusal to surrender as fanaticism, our willingness to sacrifice as madness." He gestured toward the viewport, where Earth hung like a blue jewel against the stars. The Concord demanded safeguards ways to ensure that anyone who worked with humans understood what they were dealing with. The threshold trial wasn't our idea. It was theirs. Velith's enhanced mind processed this information, but her borrowed human memories provided the emotional context. "You show them what it means to be fragile, to be moral, to choose hope when logic demands despair. We show them what it means to be human," Marcus corrected gently. "The good and the terrible, the beautiful and the broken. Because if someone is going to work alongside us, they need to understand that we don't fight because we're fearless. We fight because we're afraid of losing the things that make existence worthwhile." The silence stretched between them, comfortable rather than tense. Velith realized that her warrior's instincts weren't screaming warnings about this unremarkable human. Instead, she felt something she had never experienced before: recognition. Not of a fellow predator, but of a kindred spirit who understood the weight of protecting others. "The diplomatic mission I came here for," she said finally. "The trade negotiations between Drakmor Prime and the Terran Republic. I thought I needed to demonstrate strength to earn respect." Marcus smiled not. The predatory grin of a conqueror, but something warmer and infinitely more dangerous. "Ambassador, you've just demonstrated more strength than most beings show in a lifetime. You survived the trial. More importantly, you learned from it. He stood, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting she had studied, but never understood. Welcome to Earth, Valeth of House Krun. Let's talk about building something better than the empires our ancestors left us. As she reached out to clasp his offered hand, Valeth realized that she had passed the test not by maintaining her warrior's pride, but by allowing it to be transformed into something larger, the recognition that true strength came not from the ability to dominate, but from the courage to understand and protect. The human she had come to negotiate with had become something far more valuable, the first being in the galaxy who might actually comprehend what she had learned in walking those impossible human paths. They had much to discuss,